Bill, global namaste to you, Bill.
Good morning. How you doing? Or afternoon?
I'm doing great. Bill, for all of you out there, Bill Douglas, wow. He's been working also with Dr. Chow for many years, and he's done this amazing work of bringing the World Qigong and Tai Chi Day every year together all over the world. Talk about bringing people from the world together. Bill has done really extraordinary job of that, and also is now working on the Global Transformation Project. Here we have the logo for this 22nd World Congress, Qigong, Tai Chi, TCM, Natural Healing. Yes. So Bill, you must know each other, right? Dr. Fang and Bill?
Yeah, well,
yes, I know.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, the work that you guys are doing, that's, it's part of, work that's going on all over the planet. And the science at this point is just overwhelming. I mean, it's just overwhelming, that everybody should be doing these things.
Yeah.
I want to thank Bill. He's the one that created the World Tai Chi Day. So to bring a consciousness to the world through your effort. So thank you so much. I really appreciate and respect that.
Thank you, Alex. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah, every year it seems to grow and grow and grow, and it's to me, it's just the work he's done and the work Dr. Fang has done and Dr. Gupta. They serve as models for where our dream, our vision here at Healing Our Earth of where we can go with this world right now. We're needed. This work that you've done is needed more than ever.
Well, we've seen at World Tai Chi Day, we've seen our role as being conduits to get the work that that Alex and Dr. Rajiv Gupta that you guys are doing. And so, what we did was we created a medical research library where people could look up about 100 of the most common health issues. And then they could find the research that we've collected that shows how mind-body practices like Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation and yoga and mindfulness can help these conditions. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to organize these events around the world to utilize that research. So what you guys are doing, we're just a conduit to try to get it out. And then we teach the groups how to get publicity. And if any of you are on our newsletter, you saw that there was national media coverage of events all over the planet just a couple of weeks ago on World Tai Chi Day. And then that way they can share the research, the science that you guys are at the cutting edge of with the whole planet, because they don't get it through the mainstream media. And so we've created a way to get that important work that you guys are doing out there to the mass public.
Thank you.
I agree here that for many years, for decades and actually centuries, we have been working in isolation. So traditional medical treatment is one way, Ayurveda is separate, homeopathy is separate, Tai Chi is separate, yoga is separate, aromatherapy different. And the whole idea is that being a medical doctor for like 3 decades, there is no cure for every condition. So why not bring like all of them together? Whatever works best, we put as a toolkit and provide to the patient, because our responsibility is for the client, patient, whatever we call. And you're doing a fantastic work. So I think I'd love to connect to you so as to bring that library here. And in our world, I'm collecting the evidence. So I'm working with other people to bring the evidence. So it's all there. So when we need, we say we are not just a quack advising. We are advising a solid foundation basis. We are professional, qualified people giving you the advice based on the evidence. And then people start trusting, because the biggest thing we need is a trust. Patients should trust the doctors in order to get the benefit. the whole placebo, the way placebo works is because of the trust or belief. And this trust is lost if we tell them, oh, use this or this. If they are not trusting it, it's not going to work. So once we create a scientific basis, we bring everything together and
Yeah.
we say, in this condition, this will work better. So for example, in fibromyalgia or chronic pain, hypnotherapy will work better. If you have a weakness or something like that, or for Parkinsonism, Ayurveda will work better. For something, movement disorder, an acute fall. There is nothing better than Tai Chi. And I was talking to Keith Sharp, who is uh, um, in the UK Tai Chi Union. He is representing that, and we had long discussion for hours. And we are working together on a document of the standards. So whole idea is that it will save. NHS is free. You probably won't realize there is free NHS means those people who are elderly, they fall. There is no fall in UK. They are walking, elderly people, they fall. And it costs to the country millions. If they have been using Tai Chi and Qigong, their whole joints will become stronger and their awareness of joints will be better. So if we can reduce the fall by even 10%, 20%, it will
Yeah.
save a lot of money.
Yeah, actually, I think vastly higher than that. Dr. Herbert Benson at Harvard, the author of the relaxation response, he estimated, or he said the data estimates that between 60 and 90% of the health issues that people are facing are caused by stress and best treated or prevented by mind-body practices. And actually, I don't know, about 20 years ago, I had come across a 20-year study from Kaiser Permanente, and it said that 70% of the illnesses sending people to their doctors were caused by stress. And so I called up Dr. David Sobel at Kaiser because it was just, it was so validating of what I had thought that I contacted Dr. David Sobel to just confirm that this was an actual study that Kaiser did. And he said, yeah. And he said, actually, depending on how you looked at the data, that number could go as high as 85%. So we're talking about trillions of dollars in potential annual healthcare savings year after year after year in the future if we can get mind-body education as a core part of public education worldwide. And that would, imagine how different your patients would be in 20 years if they were coming out of school after 18 years of mind-body education. An hour a day is what we're advocating to the United Nations.
That's fantastic. And Dr. Fang, you have been involved with actually the model that we at Healing Our Earth and Bill and Dr. Gupta, et cetera, are really wanting to bring forth. So how did Dr. Amy manage to make this happen? Because it's something that we are really looking to do.
Well, I think Dr. Amy Mateki was very influential working with Dr. Feeney, who's one of the heads of Highland Hospital. So I think that connection makes a difference. If you have Dr. Mateki, of course, is both Western and Eastern trained, so she is totally competent in the area of both fields. And because of that, she was able to sort of persuade, convince, talk heads of departments to welcome this new model, new paradigm of healing. So a lot of it has to do with Dr. Gupta, what Dr. Gupta said, trust. There has to be trust, not just among patients and doctors, but also doctors among doctors and doctors. So the area.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, we've had a somewhat parallel experience with the University of Kansas Hospital, where we teach Tai Chi and Qigong and some yoga meditations. And the thing that I've realized over these about 3 decades now, since we've been teaching in hospitals, is that the doctors that are allies in the kind of work that you're doing and that we're all doing, those are the doctors who have actually experienced mind-body benefits in their own lives. It's those doctors, when they've actually felt it and experienced it, it's like, those are the connections that you make instantly. And I've found that doctors who haven't experienced it, it doesn't matter how much research I give them, it's not gonna find a place there. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Again, comes to trust. They trust you.
Yes.
They fall into it. They don't, then you keep on convincing them more and more, and then more effort you take and more energy it takes. It's something which will be, I think, finding the least resistance will be a good thing to do, and therefore working together, doing the collaboration will be extremely good. So I think I would appreciate that, and it will be good to connect outside. I know we have got limitation of time here, but if you connect outside to have more detailed discussion, putting all our energies together, we can replicate good practices across across the country. It's not a problem. Thank you so much, Sharon, for bringing all of us together.
You're very welcome. The efficacy of these alternative methods is very powerful. I'll give you an example. My son, he was at that point living in LA, and he had some stomach issues, and he ended up going, I think, to the emergency room, and they just did a bunch of tests and gave him some Gatorade. And, and then he went to an acupuncturist. Now he grew up with me, so he had gone to alternative, but it had been a while since he had gone. And he was, first of all, the acupuncturist spent real time with him, really exploring the many aspects of his being, what could have caused that. And then he gave him, treatment of acupuncture and then herbal medicine, and boom. So it helped him tremendously. And he's going, in fact, he just took his 2.5-year-old daughter to a child acupuncturist. So it's that experience of it. Personally, 6 months ago, I had a bad head injury. So what did I do? First thing was some aconitum, some homeopathic. I went to my acupuncturist naturopath. I went to craniosacral. And I went to Rolfing, all of that. And here I am. Yes, I did get these black eyes for a while. Some of you saw it on Healing Our Earth, because I love you and I come on regardless. But as Dr. Fang and all of you have been speaking about, bringing all of these traditional time-honored experiences of medicine, of health together is what's so needed right now. So I'm just so happy that Neil Kumar and Dr. Effie Chow, Dr. Fang, Dr. Gupta, you, Bill, are working. We're all coming together to see what we can do to heal our earth.
Beautiful.
You are
Beautiful.
perfect, Sharon. And if they were not efficacious or effective, we wouldn't be here. We are here because we believe it, and we need to transfer that belief amongst people who don't believe yet. I'm not saying they will not believe, they would believe. The question is time. They might take a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And time is now where we have got opportunity to influence them massively.
Oh, yes. This is why, let's see how many years ago now, about 5 or 6, I had the opportunity to meet Mantak Chia, and I went to interview him actually about the energy body, and it was at Eastover, a beautiful place up in Lenox, Massachusetts, and she had a whole event going on with all these Raja Yanka and Lee Holden and lots of Qigong and Tai Chi masters. And I was so impressed. I was impressed by, I've been around a lot of masters, especially from India and Tibet, I was so impressed with their grace, how much they gave from their hearts, and this sense of stillness and the sense of flow that I found coming out of dance most of my life. Qigong for me, it was just, I think not only, every human being, every dancer for sure should be doing Qigong. Because for me, it felt like here was a way not only to have grace in your movement, but to actually understand your energy body and how to use this life force, this qi, to help to understand your own self and to heal yourself. I am a complete advocate. I've spent years now interviewing people, and around the time of the World Congress, I'm going to bring out the first 2 episodes, and hopefully that will inspire people so I can raise money to do the 8 episodes that I had planned, so we can go deep into all these aspects. My dream from the beginning, from the time I encountered these arts, I encountered acupuncture when I was in my 20s. As a dancer, I had I had hurt myself, and the acupuncture was like, wow. So I just want to find a way, and this quantum chi, the 2 episodes I have, are really meant to be an introduction for the world. Every time I've shown it, immediately the audience, whatever age, they're like, where do we learn? Can we do this? So that's my mission and your mission. And to me, if we can all work together, we can achieve wonderful things.
saying whatever the mind of a man or woman can conceive and believe, he or she can achieve. Now we are not one, we are all. So it's going to happen. Thank you.
And the other thing that's so beautiful about the Taoist tradition is this total connection and understanding of nature, which is so important, especially now.
Well, and understanding that we're nature.
Yes.
It's like we experience nature when we're experiencing ourselves. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And I know, Dr. Feng, would you tell us a little about internal martial arts? I'd love for our audience to hear a little more about that.
Well, let me share with you what my teacher, Professor Wang Pei-kun, who is considered one of the 10 best teachers of China, said to me. He says, a bunch of people got together and called us internal. A bunch of people got together and called us external. So it is a matter of perspective. And the general concept, internal has to do with cultivation of qi. External has to do with cultivation of strength, speed, endurance. But they work together. In order to have qi, you need to have a body. And you have a body, you have to have strength. Where does strength come from? Comes from qi, comes from energy that you accumulate for food, accumulate from hereditary, jing, and your breathing, your exercise. So for me, in my mind, external, internal is a very vague veil to cover exercise. If you concentrate on the flow of qi and blood, which is a primary concept and idea and practice of Qigong, all it does is just circulation of qi and blood, cultivating qi and blood. But you can do this in any exercise, playing ping pong, dancing, salsa, whatever. If you have the mindset that you're cultivating your energy, you have the mindset of cultivating your spirit, you're doing Qigong, and you're doing exercise at the same time. So in my mind, internal, external is a very thin veil of understanding of separation.
And Bill, what's your perspective on this?
Well, when I first started studying Tai Chi 40 something years ago, it just blew my mind. And so I was so amazed. I just wanted to try, every Asian mind body thing that was available. So I started trying yoga and Kung Fu and karate. And I ended up studying under Fumio Demura. And I didn't even realize what a big deal he was at the time. He never told us, that he'd won 2 world karate championships, and he never told us that he was the stunt double for Pat Morita and the Karate Kid. And I only discovered it many, decades after we'd studied with him. But he told me something that really stuck with me, that taught me a lot about Tai Chi, although he was teaching karate. And he said, the power of your punch. He said, it's not about your brawn or your physical strength or, any of the things that we normally think of. He said, what determines the power of the punch is how relaxed you are between here and here. If you're completely relaxed between here and here, then that punch is going to have, the force behind it. Of course, the way your body's aligned, all those things you have to practice. But that taught me a lot about the power of Tai Chi, because, really, when we practice Tai Chi, we realize that what we're trying to do is we're trying to relax out of the way of the forms. And I think Bruce Lee said, he said, you want to learn everything you can about your art and then spend the rest of your life trying to forget everything that you learned. And so it's that flow. And Alex, you mentioned how, dance could be a Qigong exercise. And I think it's all determined, by how much we're just letting go and letting, whatever physical expression flow through us so that the mind's not in the way, and then we get into that kind of alpha meditative flow state. And one of the things that I found, Sharon, that I was going to mention earlier, is, I've had several ballet dancers, that aren't necessarily professional anymore, but they were trained in ballet. And a big challenge that they had was letting go of holding positions. And I realized, it's because, when you train in ballet, you're looking at the mirror. And I remember reading a Tai Chi master, and he said, the mirror is your enemy. And I realized, as I was teaching with mirrors and without mirrors, when we have mirrors in the room, people are looking with their minds from outside of themselves and then back at themselves. But with Tai Chi and Qigong, it's like you're feeling your alignment. When you're aligned, and when you're flowing well, because the way that's the internal. You know how it feels, and you know how it feels to be relaxed. And so it's like that. That internal external is just such a really extraordinary weave that I think both Qigong and yoga, can apply that. It all depends on how they're taught. But I think there's just beautiful cultivations of that internal, external, the union, the yoga. Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I was trained from 3 as a ballet dancer, then modern dance in New York. And then I found Indian classical dance, Kathak, North Indian dance. And my Guruji, who I lived with, Sitara Devi, she took the mirror away. I was used to making sure all my lines were perfect.
Right. Right.
And she took the mirror away. She said, this is about you embodying these deity, embodying the goddesses and the gods and all the different beings in the myths and stories, incredible ones of Hindu mythology. And that changed me completely. And it changed the way I teach. I mean, I'm still, as a teacher, I still like to make sure that people are doing things in alignment and understand the mechanics of the body. When I first encountered yoga, and that was like in the 60s, actually, Iyengar, what I found so interesting coming from dance, it was such an internal focus, a focus on feeling, instead of that, what you're talking about, just looking at yourself and trying to be perfect on an external. So it was this, and an internal sense of alignment.
Yeah, one of the things that you just mentioned, you were talking about, all the mythology and everything that was flowing through you. And, I've talked about, since I've learned about Rupert Sheldrake, the biologist, and his concept of morphic resonance. And what helped me understand it the best, for anybody that hasn't been exposed to it, but you can find him on YouTube. But he talks about the monarch butterflies, how they migrate from the same place in Mexico to the same place in Canada every year. But none of those monarchs live long enough to make that trek. So there's some he talks about kind of a warp that is created from repetitive consciousness that actually creates something in the universe that those butterflies are following. And there's other examples of this. But that's what, after I learned about that, I started to, realize that, when we're doing Tai Chi, we're practicing forms that have been practiced for hundreds of years by many, many people. And so that feeling of like a morphic resonance, it's like you feel that real power flowing through you when you relax out of the way. And, and that's where the internal, the alpha state, consciousness, where you let go and just feel that flow coming through.
It's an extraordinary thing. The BBC was here in Crestone, and I got to dance as Lakshmi in the Lakshmi temple here. And what happened? It was like, my Guruji's energy of so many beings, and Lakshmi herself. I really went into some other kind of state. They were like, and they said, we've never seen anyone express so much joy.
Oh my.
And it was just, Lakshmi's beauty and grace just flowed through me. It was, but, I had serious training too. So there are a lot of people these days that say, oh, I'm embodying, I'm channeling, I'm this, but there is something really to be said.
Well, and I think that's that magical mix of the yin and the yang, that both yoga and Qigong are so so, so refined at enabling us to produce, where we actually, we have the physical awareness from doing it over and over and over and over again. But then while that's happening, the mind is learning how to relax out of the way. But just one thing I just wanted to share, you reminded me of a really beautiful story that they brought a bunch of hula dancers in from Hawaii to Washington, D.C. when they were there was like a big monument that they were commemorating to Hawaii. And so they brought the hula dancers in, and some media person was interviewing one of the hula dancers, and she said, wow, she goes, you must be kind of, a little bit nervous, right? Performing in front of the president and senators and, all this stuff. And she said, nah, she said, I wasn't nervous at all. She said, I don't dance for them. She said, I dance for the unseen. The unseen.
Yes. And so we call in, the first thing, one of the first things that Sitara told me was, you take your bells, which are your sacred instrument, and you call in all the gurus, all the masters, everyone who has been a part of this tradition going back.
Uh-huh.
You ask them to be present, not only to witness, but also to help you. And so that understanding also has been part of my Qigong practice. I've been graced to take some teachings with Master Li Jianfeng, and I brought his incredible daughter, Jing Li, recently onto Healing Our Earth. She's such a delight, and I'm hoping she'll be part of the Congress because what she's doing is just gorgeous. And I'd like to bring Dr. Keith Sharp on, because I know he's going to want to join the discussion. Hi, Keith. Global namaste.
Namaste, and lovely seeing you folks from across the pond. All right, Bill, I did a little bit of review shortly, and I have been in contact with you since 2003. Did you know that?
Time flies, doesn't it?
Well, I was quite young at that stage.
We were the young Turks of Tai Chi.
Yes, very much so. Dr. Alex Feng, I've not had the pleasure of meeting, so hello to you, Alex. All right, pleasure to know you. I have to correct Sharon on one point. I am not a doctor.
Oh, okay.
Some people get that impression, but I think that I offer a little bit of administration, and I've been in touch with my original teacher, and I was a expat in Saudi Arabia, and the gentleman there was called Rick Actex, and Rick introduced me to Tai Chi in 1994, 95, and one of the things he said is, what's wrong with your left heel, your left ankle? And I said, I had a soccer injury, and I had to have some of the bone taken out. He said, I thought so, because when you do repulse monkey, you drift over to one side and over the other side. It's like a rolling monkey as opposed to in a straight line. What I'd like to share with you, if I may, is that I am not a Tai Chi or Qigong specialist. I ran classes, I ran them for over 50s for quite some time, and I'm an administrator and hopefully initiator. Bill, Alex, and it might be useful for you, but I know that Sharon knows this, that I'm responsible in the UK now for the Tai Chi and Qigong Union for Great Britain in arranging partnerships, arranging collaborations, and I am absolutely delighted when I hear you talking about the influx of yoga, prana, Qigong, and Qi, because most of the people in the Tai Chi Union were martial artists. And I've introduced in the last 6 years the theme, our aims and visions are to have Tai Chi and Qigong approved by the government and National Health Service as complementary therapies. And what a wonderful challenge that is. But my goodness, it does take a lot of toll on my persistence. But as a former project manager, I am determined, if I last long enough, to see this happen. And I see Rajiv is smiling because he has the unpopular problem of representing the Healing Our Earth and myself, sorting out a memorandum of understanding and a partnership between the Tai Chi Union and Healing Our Earth. This is spreading it worldwide, and I bow in deep respect to all of you that have all this inner knowledge. I am coming from a slightly different platform, which is I was trained as an engineer, not a qualified engineer, shipyard engineer, and I've traveled to 60 countries in the world, and I've just picked up experience as I've gone along. And hopefully, you will be able to watch 2 hours next week when I have the pleasure of hosting 2 hours with some of my selected speakers from across the world. And they will be focusing on collaboration as much as we can. And that will stretch from Hong Kong to Oregon. I'm delighted to be a part of this organization. I have a bone to pick with Sharon. She doesn't pick up her emails as quickly as I thought she would.
Who does?
Who does? All right. I lived in the time of, and you probably remember it was facsimiles. And before that, going back to a stage when it was letters. All right. So I used to be able to say to somebody, I'll be back in touch with you in 3 days' time.
Yeah. That was before we got 100 letters a day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I actually amazed at the social end for it. But I see that Chef D is still on. I tuned in earlier on, and at my age, I find it very difficult not to follow the lines of microwave, easy meals, and prepared brisket that I've just enjoyed with my wife in red wine. But it takes me back to the days that in the 1940s and 50s, we did not have any control over our food. We were on ration books. And I wrote down at the time, which was schools. They no longer have home economics. They no longer have sports days after the classes. It's not joined up. But in the 1940s, what was my main meal? It was suet dumplings. And sometimes, because I was an apprentice in a shipyard, it was 8 pieces of bread and sometimes had special beef dripping with salt. All right. And I'm still here 82 years after it. Ladies, gentlemen, I'm delighted that we're able to converse. And people ask me, why are you involved? I said, I have no idea. I've followed an inverted triangle, which is starting off with a little bit of knowledge, listening and learning to lots of people, but only taking out the information I think can actually have an effect on the world. Bill, you know James McRitchie?
Yes. Yes.
James is one of my primary speakers next week.
Great.
All right, because he is backing me, although he is only coming on to support me, which is a really, really nice tribute, because he wants to follow his own Tao procedures and learning. All right. So from the UK, I'm delighted to see you. I'm delighted to be participating in this. And I look forward to you listening to my colleagues next week from across the world. And Rajiv, I think it's going to be time after that event to actually say, where do we go from here?
Yes, where do we go? And to have all of you together, it's really important. I mean, I really believe the work that Dr. Fang has been doing is, it should be part, that knowledge of it, that experience of it, that understanding of it should be part of your mission, Bill, and all of us, you know, with the Global Transformation Project, with all of our ideas and dreams of creating a healthier world. And Bill, please tell us a little about the Global Transformation Project?
Well, the Global Transformation Project came about because I spent 40 years collecting the science on mind body. And what I began to realize was the big science is behind the big five, and that is Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. And as I was putting this book together, it's the new second edition of the Gospel of Science that just came out first of January this year. And as I was compiling all this science, I just realized that it is literally insane that mind-body education is not a core part of public education worldwide. And that graph that you have right there, Sharon, if you could just leave it there for a second, if you look at the stairs going up there, what the science shows as far as educators are concerned is that mind-body practices increase IQ, they increase math proficiency skills, they increase GRE reading skills, they improve focus and improve test scores. They reduce ADD and ADHD, less depression, less anxiety, stronger immunity, and less illness. I mean, really dramatically less illness when students practice these things. And so, it would just be insane for any teacher to look at this and say, oh, no, I don't want my students to have higher IQs or better math proficiency or better GRE reading scores or higher test scores. It's just at the point now where it's just crazy that it hasn't already happened. And so, so the goal of the Global Transformation Project is to get mind-body education into public education. And the way that we're going to approach that is we're lobbying for a United Nations resolution for mind-body education and public education worldwide. And so if you go to this globaltransformationproject.org page that Sharon's on, you can see our petition. You can also see the science. It's just starting right below where your cursor is, increase students' IQ. If you scroll down just a little bit from where you are. Yeah, and you can go down and the science is just endless. And so it just makes just absolute common sense that this should be part of public education. But what's fascinating is that the TM Foundation has been putting a lot of effort and time and money into research over the past decades. And what they've discovered is that when you get 1% of a population of, an institution or a city practicing high-level meditation, it improves the behavior and well-being of the whole city. And it's actually measurable. They've worked with police departments and they've dramatically dropped the HRA rates, the homicide rates and assaults, the violent crime rates in cities by having 1%. Now, what's fascinating is that World Tai Chi Day, the event that we founded 23 years ago, I think, Princeton University had their Paralab had spawned a global consciousness project. And what they discovered was that there was a global consciousness that could be affected by events on the planet. When massive amounts of people like Princess Diana's funeral were focused on one thing or one emotion, their computers went off track all over the planet, and they began to realize as they looked at other events that there was like a global consciousness. And so then they started to look at mind-body events like the International Day of Yoga, World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, International Day of Peace Meditation, these different days, and they took their computers off track. And so actually, I have some photos. If I can do a screen share, I'll show you some of the graphs that I got from the Princeton research program. Let me see if I can do a share screen.
I do want to mention one thing, and I think Dr. Feng will agree with me. I also think the power of dance and the power of music to affect the same kind of, inner peace, inner joy, connection that we're talking about with Qigong and yoga, etc.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. But because we're trying something so overwhelmingly huge that we just, over the 40 years, the science on the big five is just so massively overwhelming that we figured that would be the best way to get a little toe in the door of public education worldwide. And then that opens the floodgates, for more science, on dance and singing and art, all these things. But the science on the big five, it's just so incredibly overwhelming. And so, I was gonna do a screen share.
Bill, if you will keep on talking and promoting Zoom, we are not allowed to do that because
well, what I'm trying to do is get this.
yeah, you must be ready with your product before. I said, go ahead now, maximize the screen and it's come on the thing. Thank you.
Okay.
If you
All
make
right.
it-
So yeah, so this is the data chart that we got from the Princeton University Global Consciousness Project. And what you see in the center there is that black line going across the middle, the 0 line. And what this is it's like an electronic coin flipper. It's called a random event generator.
It's just babbling.
I'm sorry.
Go on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's called a random event generator. It's like flipping a coin 200 times per second. And so normally it hovers around that black 0 line going across horizontally, because that's what keeps the lights on in Las Vegas. It's that statistical probability. But what they found was that when they looked at these mind-body events, this is the 24-hour period of World Tai Chi Day in 2007. And what you can see is that starting at the beginning of the World Tai Chi Day, the random event generators flipping went way off course down towards the bottom. And then it reached the European wave, because it starts in New Zealand, goes across Asia and Africa and Europe. And anyway, when it got to the European 10 a.m. in Europe, UTC time, then you see it go dramatically up off the right top corner. And so that divergence off of that line is a statistically probable indication that we created greater coherence in global consciousness during that 24-hour period. And this is true of not just World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, but this is also true of the World Yoga Day, which I have right here, if it'll open. Okay, let me see if it opened. Yeah, there we go. Okay, see how that diverged off of the 0 line?
Yes.
And yep.
Yeah.
And then I've also got the International Day of Peace.
So are you familiar with Lynn McTaggart's work?
Yes, somewhat. I'm not deeply steeped in it, but I'm very familiar with that work.
Yeah, it would be great to bring her on too.
And then here's I'd love to talk to her about this as well. That'd be awesome. Oops.
Dr. Rose and Bill, Dr. Gupta, thank you so much. I have another engagement.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, it was nice
And
seeing you, Alex.
look forward to speaking with you personally soon about music.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah. So now this is this is a composite of these global, they call them healing and global harmony events. That's World Yoga Day, World Tai Chi Day, World Peace Day. And so what you can see is the Z score that you see on this screen is about 3.3. And just to kind of put that in context, for lay people like myself, the Z score for when they discovered the Higgs boson particle at the particle accelerator in CERN in Switzerland, that was a 5 Z score. So this is very close to what got the Nobel Prize for physics. I mean, this is a 3.3 is a very high Z score. It's, I mean, there's no way that that there's not something happening in global consciousness. And what we've found through our experience with World Tai Chi Day is that it takes vastly less than 1% of the world's population to have an impact on global consciousness, because, in 2007, World Tai Chi Day was probably only tens of thousands of people. And we actually created greater coherence in global consciousness. So everybody out there, just kind of imagine just for a moment, by getting in the United Nations resolution to advocate the science to public educators worldwide to get mind-body into public education, and countries around the world, a lot of them should want to do it because it's going to save them, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars every year to do this. And it's a real low cost way of doing that. And so as this takes root and starts to spread through public education around the world, you're talking about introducing hundreds of millions of new meditators into the planet Earth. And we already know that, the TM research shows that only 1%, if you have 1% of high-level meditators, that it has a huge impact reducing violent crime rates. And one of the things that most people don't know, I wish I had that graph here, I don't, but one of the things most people don't know is that violent crime rates in the United States and in many countries around the world are at 40-year lows right now. Now, the reason people don't believe it when I say that is because, you know, they say, well, the news told me last night that violent crime rates are through the roof. Well, you know, they may have gone up a little bit that much, but overall, they're at 40-year lows. They never get close to what they were 40 years ago. And over that 40 years, that's the same time that mind-body practices have spread across the planet like a wildfire. And so that's no coincidence, because sociologists can't explain why the violent crime rates are going down. But being steeped in mind-body practice and being a global organizer of mind-body events, and then finding out that we change global consciousness in a scientifically measurable way, you know, that tells me this is no coincidence. We are actually transforming the planet. And imagine if we get this into public schools and we have public school children all over the planet going into alpha brainwave state with the rest of us that are practicing these things. We're talking about global transformation on a massive scale that would change the planet for the rest of history. You know, it's like our great grandchildren would be looking back at our generation going, wow, those guys were awesome. Look what they did.
I agree. As an educator, being in the schools for years, I brought in meditation, you know, under the guise of story, right? We would bring it into a story. I brought in meditation and yoga, and the effect, I saw it personally. And I'd like to say a global namaste to Dr. Pamela Jirali, who's here with us today.
Sharon, it's so nice to see you again and to be a part of this group again. Thank you. Thank you.
And I don't know if you've met Bill.
I haven't. Hi, Bill.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yes, I love what you have to say.
I'd
That's
love to
great.
hear your thoughts on.
Yeah, please go to the globaltransformationproject.org and check it out more.
I will do that. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about the power of bringing this education into mind-body education. I know you're very deeply in that, into the schools and to the hospitals and to the world. I know you've been a nurse. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting subject, spiritual blueprinting.
Yes. Yes, well, I think it is certainly the way to go. We need our children to be exposed to this so early on so that it becomes a part of their lives. It becomes ingrained in their way of being. You know, for us, we started in a different place and kind of made our way. And certainly my life, you know, reflects a huge transition because I was in the healthcare system, traditional healthcare. And I worked primarily with health organizations. I worked at the Fox Chase Cancer Center, where back in the late 70s started the first multidisciplinary cancer care teams, which was amazing. And then I worked for the American Cancer Society and Prevent Blindness America. So I worked with a lot of health organizations, but back when I worked for the American Cancer Society, if I had been doing what I do now, I would be one of their unproven methods. But I know that our lives bring us forward in many ways that are just inspiring. And so when we discover more about who we are, and I talk about how we discover our divine blueprint, so that we can be authentic and in alignment with the truth of our being. What I have learned has changed my whole perspective on healing from when I was a nurse and in the healthcare system, because I recognize the limitations that we have in the healthcare system. But this is kind of the power that we can have if we open ourselves to higher guidance and to ourselves. And it showed me also the circle of power, which is part of the blueprint for the human spirit. because we're slaves and victimized in slavehood. Then we become, we say no so that we can say yes to something better and something higher, until we are free to be all that we are. So that is just an example of how this kind of process might work, and how wild and out there it is. It isn't anything that anybody ever trained me to do. It totally is just a gift that came to me. I have not researched it or tried to prove it works, because I just trust it and know that it does. And certainly I've worked with a number of clients that have had life-changing, instantaneous healings as a result.
There's Pam, there's a study that kind of parallels somewhat what you're saying, and that is that the research shows that people that meditate are more likely to actualize the lives that they desire. And, it makes me think that part of it is what you're talking about. And Keith kind of talked about this as well, kind of what led you, Keith, to doing what you're doing right now. You kind of followed these steps, and you're talking about that too, Pam, where you kind of cut loose from the program.
Yes.
And you started following these steps. And I think, going into alpha state, these mind body practices, they can facilitate us, letting go of what is, so that we can open up to what we might become, like you're saying. And, and then that's when the magic happens. And that's a big problem with society right now. And a lot of it's the media. I actually get into this in my book about how the media is like fear and panic driven. That's how they get their viewership. It's all business practices. But teaching in hospitals, I see how it stresses people out, because a lot of the patients in my classes, they watch news all day long. And so they get this real kind of limited, dismal picture of the future. And the science shows that our image of the future is one of the biggest indicators of what our future will become. And so I think it's so important for the mind-body community to realize that we're a huge resource in the planet, because we're imparting things to people that will help their minds let go of the programming that you're kind of talking about. Yeah,
exactly.
I agree completely. Bill, you just brought up what I was going to bring up. I see people around me in such deep depression.
right.
Even here, where we're really in touch with nature, because the how would you describe it? What's being fed to us right now by the media is so dark.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, there are people out there today. I heard about, someone, I don't even want to mention who she is, some big leader person, saying that it's time to get rid of all the elders, that we're like a waste of time on the planet.
Well, and those kind of alarmist kind of comments from people, that's what's on the news, and it's like a lot of news programs, a lot of mainstream news programs, they'll quote somebody that, just some average person that posted something on Twitter that's outrageous. Well, news report to the world, there's going to be people saying outrageous things, but do they deserve to be front and center in the media? You know what I mean? Because there's so many solutions that we need to be talking about, and there's just no room for that. And that was one of the reasons we created World Tai Chi Day, because we wanted to create some public spectacle that was healing and connective for the planet, that we could get into that media sphere, so that it wouldn't all just be the fear-driven stuff, that people would actually see, a global community of people all coming together and doing something for health and expansion. And so part of it was to actually, do our little part to change that, that drumbeat of the media, that's just all, what they do is they know that if they create these biochemical stress triggers, you get addicted to watching the programming. And then you keep coming back. And so that's why those alarmist headlines, the clickbait headlines, and it's always upsetting stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, it's the other thing is that being around people, I'm finding, who are addicted, it's an addicting thing. It's addicting to the fear.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you, Pamela, how do you keep that from kind of infecting you?
Yes. Well, I turned off the TV.
Yay.
I mean, I may live in la la land, but I can't live with that negativity. And I spend quiet time, and I'm not good at it because I'm kind of hyper, but But I have a way of connecting and making sure that I am tapped in. And when I don't do that, I suffer and I lose my energy, I lose my, focus. But I think it's important that we have our own ways. And so many times, for many years, I followed everybody else's practices. And then I realized that I had my own inner guru. And so I let go of that. And I think we have to learn how to trust that too, because we're not just clones, and our way is going to be different from everybody else's. And we have all of our own unique gifts and ways that we can share. And so I think we have to learn how to trust ourselves and trust the source of that, and not question as much. It took me quite a while to kind of go with it, because I thought I needed a guru, and I asked for one once. I wrote an affirmation in my journal. I says, a guru is coming into my life now, and this voice said, well, what am I, chopped liver? It's like, you're here. I'm here. And so you just kind of allow yourself. But we need a whole new model for healthcare. We need a model for education. We need a model for parenting. We need a model for how we engage in relationships. And the blueprint for the human spirit showed me how it all fit together. It provided me with this beautiful way that we can live consciously and compassionate and authentically and creatively, so that we eventually, those of us when we reach this stage in our lives, leave a legacy of love and truly make a difference. That is what we are doing together.
Pam, you've mentioned, I've been wanting to mention this, you've mentioned compassion several times. And one of the studies that I have in the new second edition of the Gospel of Science is they were looking at people's DNA expression. And they did an experiment where they had people practicing selfish hedonistic pleasures and then practicing altruistic pleasures. And they both reported like the same kind of high, kind of uplift feeling, but the DNA knew the difference. And when they were practicing hedonistic selfish pleasures, the health expression of the DNA degraded, more inflammation. When they were practicing altruistic pleasures, where they were benefiting the greater good with no compensation for it, their DNA expressed more healthfully, less inflammation. And so from the very core of our being, compassion is woven into the fabric of the universe. And I think the meditation helps connect us to that. And one of the other studies I was going to tell you about was they found that when people practice mind-body practices, the part of the brain that feels isolated becomes less active, and the part of the brain that feels connected becomes larger and more active.
Yes. And it doesn't take huge things to make a difference. A breath can make a difference. A smile can make a difference. Looking into somebody's eyes can make a difference. There's just so many simple things that we can do. And I think sometimes we make it harder than it really needs to be. And so I think when we pause in the moment, come to this still point, instead of reacting, and bring everything into alignment, I think that can make a difference. And I know that meditation, yoga, all these practices do make a difference. So we find our own, we find our way, we do that. And one person at a time, with passion, like our host Sharon, and with love, we make a difference. We make
Alan Watts, he I think that anytime we go into the alpha state, and when we meditate, we're not there all the time, our mind wanders and stuff, but we'll have those moments, where the mind will just kind of get in the flow and the drift. We go into that alpha state. And I think that's a form of extraordinary consciousness experience. Now there's many levels of it. And I think you were talking about your own personal extraordinary consciousness experience that got you on your path. But anyway, Alan Watts said something that really stuck with me. And I didn't realize it when I was reading and studying his stuff decades ago, but then just when when I was watching on YouTube, I was watching an Alan Watts interview, and I found out that he had had extraordinary consciousness experiences, several of them. And he said that one of the things that's very common for people when they come back from an extraordinary consciousness experience is to see the divine in everybody's eyes.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we need to do. We need to look in the mirror until we can see it in ourselves, and then look into the eyes of the others until we see it in them as well. See beyond the behaviors that we may not appreciate, and see that
including our own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do, you know, it's like, yes, but
Yes.
Certainly we are, and I like to think we're all divine divas, devos, whatever, and that as we discover our divine blueprint, then we can realize the truth of our being, that we walk between these worlds, you know, part human, part divine. We're on the world, but not of the world, you know. So there are so many things that I think we can do to just uplift humanity. And when we honor who we are and our sacred gifts and develop them and share them in a compassionate way, then that's why we're here. And so I'm blessed to be a part of this and to hear what everybody else is doing. Bless you all for the gifts that you bring and for every moment that you are committed to making a difference. Thank you.
Beginning in New York as an arts educator and dance performer, Jill witnessed the powerful role the arts can play to touch the inner spirit and bridge to core content. Becoming a certified teacher in Arizona, attuned to the importance of early education and the valuable role the teacher plays. As an elementary teacher, leader, and coach, she's endeavored to elicit a deep love of learning within these precious years. Working in the Mexican Caribbean at Modern Academy Cancun facilitated becoming bilingual and growing in cultural understanding, supporting her theme of building bridges, not walls. She writes on these themes in her blogs on her website, transformededucation.org. We've known each other, since the 80s, .com. Oh, okay, .com. We've known each other since the 80s. I've watched her grow and blossom into this extraordinary educator. So tell us about the summit and your work and what's coming up.
Wow. Well, Sharon, you are just so eloquent. And I love how I get not only inspired by your shining, but empowered in my shine. So thank you for that. Thank you. And I'm very glad to come on the heels of Pamela, excuse me, who I was just speaking with, because very much, Pamela, we are in line as well about the holistic modalities and the importance of the consideration of not only the whole child, but also the whole adult, the whole educator. And it's really a message that I'm developing more and more through books. I have Teaching with the Soul in Mind and Peace Education, Our Time Is Now. And these are ideas about the power of educators as transformative agents, and not only as them themselves, but empowering the children to be transformative agents. Empowered educators. And even though the website is empowering, the summit is empowering educators, the website is empowerededucators.info. And so that's where you could come and sign up. It's free. It's 21 days of pre-recorded interviews released each day, sharing about how to transform learning environments. And that includes a definite recognition of my path, Montessori, which is dear and near to my heart, and is also homeschooling. It also includes homeschooling, and just such a wealth of information about all ages, pre-K up to 12. So if you know an educator, it's like you were saying, it is a generous act to bring them together, to allow us to hear the voices that are helping transform the leading edge of education. And also to empower other communities that are. For example, a childhood potential had just came through. That's specifically Montessori. I definitely recommend that conference as well. It's still accessible. Childhood potential. And that had 46 leaders speaking. So they were, Montessori all, but one of them is a world leader that's now stepping out from his principalship to become an activated global leader, Gavin McCormick. He talks about the COVID influence. And so we're cross-connecting communities by him just sharing that video as a bonus to my summit and being able to say, like, look how we can support each other. It doesn't have to be competitive. It doesn't have to be, no, it's just me, my thing. And that kind of idea. It's about how are we getting this message as a movement to empower holistic education throughout the world. And even if you don't know about Montessori, because she's already so much holistic education and empowerment of the child, even if you don't know about that path, you can still get principles involved from it, or you can understand about how could I integrate just basic concepts so that there is more child independence or teen, and that you can empower the gifts from within, just rather than overlay from without, and do this teacher-centered teaching versus the child-centered teaching, which is very different because there's much more choice, there's much more independence, there's learning from each other. And, they say if you really want to learn something, you have to teach it. Well, you could, even in the ages 3 to 6, those 6-year-olders are teaching the 3-year-olders. Here's how you wash your table. Here's how you sweep up something if you break it, and so that we can empower the teacher within, the one that has answers and gifts that came into this world with the spirit alive and wanting to offer those gifts, that if we empower those feelings and that awareness and that consciousness in education, it's making such great better use of all those hours that we spend there anyway. So many hours are spent towards education. Why not make it up an uplifting and transformative agent in our world?
That's why when I went on to Jill's summit, I felt it was very important to give the teachers, not only talk about what I've done and the power of arts in education, but to give them a little Qigong practice that they can do themselves, and then they can bring to their children. Just think, as Bill well knows, if you could have these teachers starting the day with a little Qigong practice, and Qigong is for children, it's so connected with nature. So we did one, I'm a big bird, I fly in the sky, just to bring their Qi, together into their different dantians, and bringing Qi from the sky and pushing out all the old, as I say, yucky energy, and just being renewed. And I think it's really important if we could get these basic Qigong principles into the schools for the teachers to use.
There's a study and it's cited at globaltransformationproject.org, but there's a study that found that teachers that meditate, it dramatically reduces teacher burnout for when teachers
meditate in the classroom, or is separate?
Well, meditate on their own, I think was how the study was done, just that they were practicing their own meditation. But yeah, I mean, the resolution that we have, the UN resolution that we have at the website for, and people can sign the petition, and it'd be great if you could inform the educators that you come in contact with about our petition. And especially, if they're educators, that would add even more to the petition. And you had mentioned HeartMath earlier, and I'm so glad HeartMath is part of your program. The founder of HeartMath, Dr. Roland McCratty, is one of the scientific supporters of the Global Transformation Project's United Nations resolution for mind-body education and public education.
Wow, I need to be aware of that.
Yeah, globaltransformationproject.org, and everybody can sign the petition there.
Globaltransformationproject.org. Okay,
Yeah,
that's important. I need to make sure to have that as a thing to share.
Yeah, that'd be
Except they
great.
are pre-recorded, so it would be best. info@transformededucation.com is my email, and if you could just send me that link and as how you'd like me to feature it, then I could include it in the promo.
Yeah, what was that email again?
info@transformededucation.com. Transformed Education is my site more about my background and my work, and that's .com. And then empowerededucators.info is the summit. But Transformed Education also has access to the summit, so you could just go there.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
I wanted to just mention something, Sharon, as you were like talking about being the bird and pushing out the yucky energy and stuff like that. I think sometimes it is helpful to couch what we do and say in common language, in words that are not necessarily linked with one particular form of practice or whatever. Because sometimes I think it can be a negative if we, use language and words that other people are not familiar. That's not part of mainstream, but there's a way to bring in the playfulness for children, a way to use. I mean, they're universal concepts, and so I think we need universal language that would be helpful, so that it isn't like, oh, that's I don't believe that way. It's not about that, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's like hospitals call external Qigong therapeutic touch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that way it doesn't freak people out.
They get away with it because they use certain acceptable terminology, so to speak. And I think it's kind of a process where we're sensitizing people, like bringing it in almost sometimes through the back door, but that's okay. Because we're doing it.
And like feeling relaxation instead of feeling chi, you can talk in that language, but some things are like ready-made, for public education, like the animal Qigong, being the tiger, or being the bear, so it's like, some of this stuff's just ready to go.
And that's what I totally loved about Sharon's presentation, is that she really did make it accessible and brought in the pleasure, and the fun was radiating it, first of all. Excuse me. And then really very manageable movements. It's not like you have to be a dancer to be able to be incorporating those basic concepts. And so that's a big piece of it, is like, just give it a try, and encouraging that direction, because the kids are very responsive. They really are.
So I'd like to say something about the work Jill and I have done in the schools, because Pamela, you brought in, how do we connect all these things? Well, myth, story, and symbol, music, rhythm.
Universal.
It's universal. I saw we discussed this in our interview, I saw such transformation in kids through these stories, and through embodying these stories and playing out these characters and drawing what they saw in the different. I led them through guided meditations in different cultures and stories, and I had them draw it, and I had them always something they could take home with them and show their parents. I even got the parents involved, the superintendent of school. It's like, these things are possible, but the schools have to know that they're there. I mean, this was in the 90s. There was a big move in arts and education. There was money for it. But these days, I don't know, we need to revisit that and revive that, because as we all know, it's so important.
Well, the way we come at the Global Transformation Project, one of our focuses in pitching this is society could be saving trillions of dollars every year on healthcare and social costs. And that's provable. We're beyond, where that's just some flighty idea. That's scientific fact. And so if you talk in dollars and cents, and, you know, about how you can save, you know, trillions of dollars every year, that, you know, we've really got the facts on our side, you know, economically, as well as, you know, spiritually and, you know, that.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. I mean, trillions, that's a big deal.
Yeah, in my,
So,
I have a 710-page book that lays out all the science, all the data, so that when you get to the end of the book, you know that what I just said is absolutely factually accurate.
wow, you've really done a lot of work on that. That's a devotion of heart and soul for sure.
About
That's
40
great.
years.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's the key, is like when we are tapped in to what's really purposeful, and each person is going to have their own unique, you know, thing
Yeah.
that lights them up. But by tapping into that, then we become so much more enlivened. And I think it does take turning off the news. I like what Pam said that way about, like, you know, because I felt a personal huge shift when I was like, bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, versus like, here's something I care about. I'm invigorated with this. And, you know, it's, yes, pushing me into new courage zone. I have to have the courage to move into a new zone. But by willing to be able to grow into new territory, it's so enlivening. And that's when we really do collectively make a difference on that global scale. So I'm excited to learn more about your project.
You know, another thing that's so exciting in the science is what they show is that when we practice mind-body practices regularly, we have a much higher incidence of gamma brainwave consciousness. And gamma brainwave is multidimensional thinking. You know, that's where those aha moments come from. And it's different parts of the brain and the mind working in conjunction in different multidimensional ways. And so this is, you know, scientifically provable. You know, if we teach kids how to meditate, you know, practice mind-body practices, that they become more adept at gamma wave thinking, which is multidimensional, you know, finding more elegant, simple solutions to complex problems. And, you know, I mean, we're at a time in history where that is just so incredibly important, to have a generation that is able to think in gamma wave consciousness.
Yes, yes. And I have a little story to tell you all, because some of you met my grandnephew, Finn, 8 years old, genius kid, who I've been encouraging in planting. And now their whole backyard is filled with food. And he had a tooth fall out. And so my brother was saying to him, like, well, what do you want from the tooth fairy? He goes, I want seeds.
Wow, that's encouraging.
Yeah.
That's a big shift right there. Something's
Oh,
going right in his
And he's
world.
just started studying karate.
talking about the Global Transformation Project. And
this is doable. We can do this. This is really within our grasp.
Honestly, Bill, I'm having all the shivers here in such a beautiful way. When you said those words, it's like you're speaking a total truth. This is what it's really about. The Global Transformation Project. This is our opportunity at this time, 2022. Here we grow. And it is that call to personal responsibility about health now as well. And as we were saying earlier, it's like that the whole healthcare, the preventative healthcare. You know, again, this would be great if it was part of public education, like how to take care of yourself properly. This, you know, which is what you're doing with the Global Transformation Project, encouraging the youngsters to come into that, almost that defragging of all the mind funk. You know, we got so over distracted. There's so much going on, and you just need that kind of. People do defrag their computers, so surely your internal computer needs that as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's no more powerful thing that we could do, you know, as like a global movement of people that want a better planet, than to facilitate public school children all over the planet learning how to access that alpha state. Because when you go into, if anybody out there is regular meditators, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're not, if you're a sporadic meditator or whatever, just get a calendar and just force yourself to, meditate 20, 30 minutes every day. And you'll start to see that when you go into that state, that's where you feel good. That's where you feel safe. That's the place where you can go to get this, this whole kind of rebooting of your computer, like you were talking about. And the science is all there. It shows. It makes us smarter. It makes us kinder. It makes us more compassionate. It makes us more creative. It makes us multi-dimensional thinkers that can solve problems in much more elegant and less fragmented ways. This is all science. It's all backed up by science.
All of these things that you've talked about, you have delineated so well. I'm so very excited, that you were able to talk about this stuff, because I know it to be, but the way that you set it out there, that's going to be a wonderful thing. And I certainly want to help get it in the hands of as many people as possible.
Sounds like you've got these down built to a science. That is amazing. But simple techniques can just change your life. But you've said that just a few brain-changing techniques could cause a change of the world, basically.
It came over time was what it really was. And it was people all over the planet's idea. And that's where I want to go with this. I want to go where I'm not the one who's always talking about it. Everybody else is. and this is doable. We can do this. This is really within our grasp.
Honestly, Bill, I'm having all the shivers here in such a beautiful way. When you said those words, it's like you're speaking a total truth. This is what it's really about. The Global Transformation Project. This is our opportunity at this time, 2022. Here we grow.
You shine from spreading the shine. And, and that's one thing, anybody who does any of the big five, yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, mindfulness, we all know that we're much easier to get along with than we were before we discovered these things. And one of my favorite quotes was from one of my Tai Chi students. And he said, Bill, he said, since I've been doing the Tai Chi and the meditation, he goes, I don't flip nearly as many people off on the freeway as I used to.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but it kind of turns all that on its head. Yeah. And so, and so it's so exciting because, the science shows that when we go into the alpha state, which all the big five can produce, it increases the physical size and function of the empathy and compassion parts of the brain. And it physically shrinks the stress, fear parts of the brain.
Sounds like you've got these down built to a science. That is amazing. But simple techniques can just change your life. But you've said that just a few brain-changing techniques could cause a change of the world, basically. A vast drop in violence. How could that happen?
Well, when I did that Folsom Prison presentation, and I found out that they had changed the behavior of the whole prison